The sun was slowly dropping behind the houses when the boy turned the corner onto the quiet street he called home. His backpack was heavy from the day, but his steps were light. He had just finished basketball practice and was humming softly, thinking about dinner and the movie he wanted to watch later. The sound of a distant siren came and went, fading into the hum of traffic. It was just another afternoon. He didn't know that within minutes his life would take a turn that would stay with him forever. He was 17, tall, polite, and known around the neighborhood as one of those kids who never caused trouble. He helped his younger sister with homework, mowed the lawn on weekends, and dreamed of getting into college on a basketball scholarship. He was walking with his phone in hand, texting a friend about a science project when a police car slowly rolled up beside him. At first, he didn't think much of it. Police cars passed by all the time. But this one didn't keep going. It slowed even more until it stopped right next to him. The boy looked up, confused. The window rolled down and an officer inside called out, "Hey you, come here for a second." The boy blinked, unsure if the man was talking to him. He looked around. The street was empty. "Me?" he asked, pointing to himself. "Yeah, you," the officer said, his tone sharp. "Where you headed?" "Home," the boy said. "Just got out of practice." "Let's see some ID," the boy's stomach tightened. He had his school ID in his wallet, but he had never been stopped like this before. He hesitated, not because he wanted to disobey, but because he didn't understand what was happening. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked carefully. "Just show me some ID," the officer repeated, this time stepping out of the car. Another officer in the passenger seat opened his door and got out too. Both men looked tense, like they were preparing for something serious. The boy suddenly felt his throat go dry. He reached slowly into his backpack, his heart pounding even though he knew he hadn't done anything wrong. The first officer's hand moved toward his belt.
Whoa, whoa!
"What are you doing?" "My ID," the boy said quickly, holding his hands up a little. "It's in my bag. Keep your hands where I can see them," the officer snapped. "Don't move until I say so." The boy froze. His heart thumped so hard it felt like it was echoing in his ears. He didn't know what to do. His hands were up. His ID was in his bag, and the two men were staring at him like he was dangerous. A car drove past slowly, the driver glancing out the window. A woman walking her dog stopped on the sidewalk nearby, watching quietly. The scene was starting to draw attention, though no one spoke. One of the officers asked again, "What are you doing around here?" "I live here," the boy said softly. Down the street. "My mom's at home." The second officer looked skeptical. "We got a call about a suspicious person walking around the neighborhood," he said. "You match the description." "What description?" the boy asked, still keeping his hands up. "Tall, dark hoodie, backpack," the man said. "That's enough." The boy swallowed hard. Half the kids at his school wore hoodies and backpacks. It didn't make sense. He wanted to argue, but he could feel how tense the air had become. The first officer looked ready to shout again, so he kept his mouth shut. He thought about his mother. She always told him to stay calm, be respectful, never argue. "If something ever happens," she had said once, "just breathe, speak slowly, and remember you have a right to be safe." But in this moment, nothing felt safe at all. The boy's phone buzzed in his pocket. He shifted slightly, and both officers reacted at once. "Don't move," one barked. "Hands up." "It's just my phone," the boy said quickly, his voice trembling. "It's just my phone." The woman with the dog took out her phone and started recording. Another person across the street did the same. The boy could feel everyone's eyes on him, but all he wanted was to disappear. The first officer glanced toward the woman filming. He looked uneasy now, but didn't back down. "You got anyone who can verify where you live?" he asked. "My mom," the boy said. "She's at work, but I can call her." "What's she do?" "She's with the FBI," the boy said softly. Both officers paused. They exchanged a look, a flicker of doubt crossing their faces. The boy noticed but didn't understand it. "He only wanted to get home. FBI, huh?" the first officer said. His tone had changed, but his eyes still watched every movement carefully. "Why don't you give her a call then?" The boy nodded.
"Can I reach into my pocket?"
The officer hesitated. Slowly, the boy moved as if time itself had slowed. He pulled out his phone, hands shaking slightly, and unlocked it. His friend had texted him a minute ago, asking if he got home safe. His thumb hovered over his mom's number. He pressed it and held the phone to his ear. It rang once, twice, 3 times. "Mom," he said quietly when she picked up. They stopped me. What? Who? Her voice instantly sharpened, alert. The police, he said, trying to keep his voice from cracking. I'm on Maple and Pine. They said I matched a description. What did you do? She asked quickly. Nothing, he whispered. I was just walking home. There was a long silence on the other end. Then her voice came through again, firm and calm. Stay where you are. Keep your hands visible. Don't argue. I'm on my way. The call ended. The boy looked up at the officers, who were now talking quietly to each other near the car. He took a slow breath. His chest felt tight, but hearing his mother's voice gave him a small sense of relief. She always knew what to do. A few minutes passed. The sky was turning orange and purple, the air cooling. The street was still. The woman with the dog had put her phone away but hadn't left. The officers seemed uncertain now, like they were waiting for something. The tension hung between them, thick and heavy. Can I sit down? The boy asked after a while. I've been standing here for a long time. The first officer hesitated, then nodded slightly. Fine, just don't move around. The boy sat on the curb, resting his backpack beside him. His legs felt weak. He didn't know how long it had been since this started. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe more. Every second felt stretched. His mind kept flashing through little thoughts. His homework waiting at home, the dinner his mom might have been cooking, the quiet hum of the house he loved. He wanted to be there, not here on the side of the road being treated like a suspect for walking home. He looked up and saw the reflection of red and blue lights flicker off the windows of nearby houses. Another police car had arrived. He sighed softly, lowering his head. Meanwhile, his mother was driving fast but careful, her hands tight on the steering wheel. She had handled tense situations before, agents, suspects, even dangerous scenes, but nothing compared to hearing her son's shaken voice over the phone. Every second mattered. She flashed her credentials to local patrol units as she sped through intersections, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and focus. She had trained her whole life to stay calm under pressure, but now the pressure was personal. Back on the street, the boy could hear the officers speaking to each other, their words muffled but tense. He caught bits and pieces. Call came in, just checking, it should be fine. He didn't understand what any of it meant. He just wanted this to end. The woman with the dog finally spoke. He's just a kid, she said from the sidewalk, her voice steady but quiet. He lives right there on that corner. I've seen him before. The first officer looked at her, unsure of what to say. He gave a short nod but didn't respond. The boy felt a small wave of gratitude toward her. Someone had noticed. Someone believed him. A few more minutes passed. The second officer got a message on his radio and turned slightly away to listen. The boy couldn't hear what was said, but he noticed the man's posture change. He seemed nervous. Then the sound of another engine approached from the distance, fast, deliberate. The boy looked up, unsure what to expect. The engine sound grew louder until it stopped sharply at the end of the block. The boy looked up from the curb, squinting through the fading sunlight. A dark car door opened, and a woman stepped out, moving quickly but with calm control. The officers glanced toward her, confused at first. The woman walked straight toward them, flashing something in her hand that caught the last bit of sunlight. The boy recognized her right away. His heart lifted. It was his mother. She was still in her work clothes, her dark jacket crisp, a badge shining just above her belt. Her face was composed, but anyone who knew her could see the storm behind her calm eyes. She didn't rush or shout. She just walked, each step measured, steady, filled with purpose. Both officers turned fully now. One stepped forward, opening his mouth to say something, but the woman spoke first. "That's my son," she said clearly, her voice calm but firm. "Step away from him, please." The street went silent. Even the people watching seemed to hold their breath. The first officer blinked. "Ma'am, this is a police matter." She held up her badge before he could finish. "Special Agent Johnson, FBI," she said. Her tone carried quiet authority. "Now tell me what kind of police matter involves detaining a minor for walking home with a backpack." The officer's mouth closed. He took a half step back. The second officer looked between them, uncertain what to do. The boy stayed still, afraid to move, but relief washed over him just from hearing her voice. "Stand up, sweetheart," she said softly to him. "You're fine now." He rose slowly, his hand still trembling. His mother moved closer, placing a hand on his shoulder like she was silently telling him he was safe. Then she turned her full attention back to the officers. I want to hear exactly what happened, she said. The first officer cleared his throat. We got a call about a suspicious person. Male, dark hoodie, backpack, walking around near Maple. He matched the description, so we stopped to check. Suspicious person, she repeated quietly, her eyes narrowing just a little. And what exactly was he doing? Just walking, the second officer admitted. So you stopped him for walking, she said. Her tone wasn't angry, just calm and precise. The kind of calm that made people nervous. And during that stop, did he threaten you? Refuse to cooperate, run? No, the first officer said. He just seemed nervous. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. He's 17 and being stopped by armed officers for no reason. Nervous seems like a reasonable reaction, don't you think? The officer's mouth opened, then closed again. By now, more people had gathered quietly on the sidewalks. Some had their phones out, filming. A few neighbors stood at their porches watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. The mother noticed them but kept her focus on the two men in front of her. She lowered her voice slightly. Gentlemen, I respect what you do. I know your job isn't easy, but there's a line between protecting and profiling, and tonight you crossed it. Neither officer replied. The only sound was the quiet rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. The boy looked down at his shoes, still shaken but proud in a strange way. He had seen his mother handle difficult people before. She had that same calm power no matter where she went, but seeing it now for him felt different. His mother turned to him again. Are you okay? He nodded, but she could see his eyes glistening. I didn't do anything, he said quietly. I know, she replied softly. And you don't ever have to explain your right to walk home. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. She turned back to the officers once more. You should both document this interaction properly, she said. For your own protection and his. The first officer hesitated. Yes, ma'am, he said finally. Good, she said. And while you're doing that, I'll be contacting your watch commander. She took out her phone, scrolling through her contacts with steady fingers. The officers exchanged a look that said everything. They knew this wasn't going away quietly. Ma'am, there's no need for all that, one tried to say. There's every need, she replied calmly. My son's dignity and safety are not optional. The crowd across the street shifted, murmuring softly. The mother noticed a few teenagers recording with wide eyes. She didn't stop them. She understood the importance of witnesses. After a pause, she slipped her phone back into her jacket pocket. I'm taking my son home, she said finally. If your department needs a statement, they can contact me directly through the field office. The officers nodded stiffly. Understood. The boy picked up his backpack, still feeling a tremor in his hands. His mother put an arm around his shoulders and guided him toward their car. The whole world felt like it was watching, and in a way, it was. When they got in the car, neither spoke for a moment. The mother started the engine, but she didn't drive right away. She turned toward him instead. Take a deep breath, she said. He did, though his chest still felt tight. I tried to do everything right, he said quietly. I didn't talk back. I kept my hands up. I told them who you were. I know you did, she said gently. You did everything right. This wasn't your fault, he looked out the window. The flashing lights from the patrol car still painted the street in blue and red. They looked at me like I was dangerous, he whispered. Why? Her heart ached at the question. She took a slow breath. Sometimes, she said softly, people see what they expect to see. They don't look long enough to see the truth. He turned toward her, his eyes searching her face. Do you think they'll get in trouble? That's not my goal, she said. What I want is for them to learn, to understand what they almost did tonight. He didn't say anything else. He just leaned back against the seat, exhausted. She reached over and squeezed his hand. You're safe now, she said. That's what matters. The drive home was quiet except for the hum of the tires on the pavement. Streetlights passed over them one after another like a rhythm of calm after chaos. When they reached their house, the boy got out slowly. The familiar sight of the front porch and the glow from the kitchen window felt like relief washing over him. Inside, everything smelled like home. Warm food, laundry, safety. His younger sister looked up from the table when they came in. You're late, she said with a small frown. Mom, where were you? Just a small misunderstanding, her mother said lightly, brushing her daughter's hair back with a gentle hand. She didn't want to explain the details, not yet. The boy went straight to his room, set down his backpack, and sat on the edge of his bed. The silence of the room felt heavy after everything that had just happened. He could still hear the echo of the officer's voice, the sharp tone, the disbelief in their eyes. His mother came in a few minutes later. She didn't say anything at first, she just sat beside him. After a while, she spoke. "I'm proud of you," she said. He looked at her confused. "For what?" "For staying calm." "For doing what you were taught," she said, "and for calling me when you needed help." "That takes courage," he lowered his gaze. "I didn't want to. I thought maybe if I just did what they said, they'd let me go." She nodded slowly. "That's what I used to think too," she said softly. "But sometimes people have to see the truth before they believe it." The boy's eyes stung again, but he blinked it away. "They didn't even believe me when I said who you were." His mother smiled faintly, though her eyes were tired. "That's okay. They do now." They sat there for a while, just breathing in the quiet. The night outside was calm, a few crickets singing softly under the porch light. Downstairs, her phone buzzed. Messages from colleagues. A few calls she'd have to return later. But for now, she ignored them. Her focus was here with her son. Finally, she said, "Tomorrow I'll go to the precinct. I'll talk to their supervisor. But tonight we rest," he nodded. "Okay," she stood, giving his shoulder a small squeeze. "Get some sleep. You're safe." He watched her leave the room, then lay back, staring at the ceiling. His heart had finally slowed, but his mind wouldn't stop replaying the moment he heard the words, "Hey you, come here." He thought about how quickly things had changed, how easily something ordinary had become frightening, and how his mother had changed it all just by showing up. Outside, the night settled back into quiet. The world kept turning, but something inside him had shifted. He didn't have the words for it yet, but he knew this night would stay with him. The morning after the incident, the house felt quieter than usual. The boy woke early, but he didn't rush to get ready for school like he usually did. He sat on the edge of his bed for a long time, staring at the sunlight slipping through the blinds. The world outside looked the same, bright, peaceful. But inside him, something had changed. He could still hear the officers' voices, the sharp tone of command, the disbelief in their eyes. He could still feel the weight of fear pressing against his chest, the way time seemed to stretch when he had his hands in the air. It replayed again and again like a scene he couldn't stop watching. He got up slowly and walked to the window. His basketball shoes sat near the wall where he had left them, the same ones he wore last evening. Somehow even they looked different now. He wondered if he'd ever feel the same walking home again. Downstairs, the smell of breakfast drifted through the air. His mother was at the stove, dressed for work but moving slower than usual. She had that thoughtful quiet about her, the kind that came when her mind was already far ahead, planning her next steps. "Morning," she said when she saw him. "Morning," he replied softly. She placed a plate in front of him. Eggs, toast, a bit of fruit, but he didn't touch it. He just looked at it for a moment, then sighed. "Do I still have to go to school?" She sat across from him. "You don't have to," she said. "If you need a day to breathe, take it. But staying home forever isn't the answer either." He nodded slowly, still not sure what he wanted. "I just don't want people asking questions," he said. "Someone probably posted the video." Her eyes softened. "They might have," she said. "But remember, you didn't do anything wrong. You have nothing to be ashamed of." He looked down. "It still feels weird. Everyone's going to look at me like I'm that kid from the video." His mother reached across the table and touched his hand. "They'll see more than that," she said gently. "They'll see a young man who stayed calm when others lost control. They'll see how courage looks when it's quiet." He didn't answer, but her words sank in. After breakfast, she grabbed her jacket and her folder. "I have to go to the precinct this morning," she said. "It won't take long. I just need to make sure the report matches what really happened." He looked at her nervously. "You're not going to yell at them, are you?" She smiled faintly. "No, I don't need to yell," she said. "I just need them to listen." The local police station was small and plain, with the smell of coffee and paperwork filling the air. When she walked in, the officers behind the front desk looked up quickly. A few recognized her badge before she even said her name. "Agent Johnson," one of them greeted carefully. "Good morning." "Good morning," she replied with a polite nod. "I'm here to speak with the shift supervisor about an incident that occurred yesterday evening on Maple Street." The man hesitated for a moment, then picked up the phone to call upstairs. Within minutes, a middle-aged man in uniform came out to meet her. He extended his hand, trying to appear friendly. "Agent Johnson, I heard about what happened. I'm very sorry for the misunderstanding." She shook his hand briefly. "I'd like to review the officer's body cam footage and their written report," she said. "And I'd like to understand what policy led them to stop a minor who was simply walking home." He nodded, motioning toward his office. "Of course. Please come in." Inside, the small office smelled of coffee and old carpet. She sat across from his desk while he pulled up the footage on his computer. For several minutes, the video played. The moment the patrol car slowed down, the officers stepping out, the questions, the tension. Her jaw tightened slightly, but she stayed silent until it ended. When it was over, she turned to him. "Do you see the problem?" she asked calmly. He exhaled. "Yes," he admitted. "They reacted too quickly. It looks bad. They should have approached differently." "It's more than that," she said softly. "They made assumptions the moment they saw him. That's not a reaction, it's a bias." He nodded, clearly uncomfortable. "You're right. We'll address it. I'll make sure there's a review." "Good," she said. "I'll be following up." She stood to leave, but paused at the door. "One more thing," she added. "Next time your department receives a call about a suspicious person, I hope they remember this video. Because next time it might not end so quietly." The man swallowed and nodded. "Understood." Back at home, the boy sat on the couch scrolling through his phone. His hands trembled slightly when he saw his face on the screen. Someone had indeed posted the video. It wasn't long, only a minute or so, but it showed everything. The officer's tone, his stillness, and the moment his mother arrived. The comments were flooding in. Some were supportive, people saying how brave he was, how professional his mother sounded. Others questioned what had really happened, or why he was stopped at all. He didn't know how to feel. His sister came over, peeking at his phone. "That's you?" she asked softly. He nodded. "You look scared," she said honestly. "I was," he admitted. She thought about that for a second. "But Mom looked like a superhero," she said. "She just showed up and they stopped talking." He smiled a little at that. "Yeah," he said quietly. "She did." The rest of the day passed slowly. Calls came from relatives, from friends who had seen the video online, and even from a teacher who said the school counselor wanted to check in with him. He appreciated the concern, but all he wanted was normal silence again. The kind where no one was looking at him, no one asking questions. That evening, his mother came home. She looked tired but composed. She set down her folder and sat beside him on the couch. "I talked to their supervisor," she said. "He promised to review everything. But I'm not stopping there. This isn't just about last night, it's about making sure it doesn't happen again." He nodded. "You're turning it into a case?" "Something like that," she said with a small smile. "An investigation into how local police respond to community calls." He leaned back, thinking about it. "You're really not afraid of them, are you?" She looked at him gently. "No," she said. "I've seen too much to be afraid. But I am tired. Tired of seeing people treated unfairly when a simple conversation could have changed everything." He looked down at his hands. "Do you think they'll change?" She thought for a moment before answering. "Change doesn't happen fast," she said softly. "But it starts somewhere. And last night it started with you." He blinked, surprised. "Me?" "Yes," she said. "Because you stayed calm. Because you didn't give them a reason to twist your story. And because you called me. That's how change starts. One person standing still when everything around them is spinning." Her words settled deep inside him. For the first time since it happened, he felt a small sense of strength instead of fear. Later that night, after his sister went to bed, he sat in his room again, thinking. He opened his notebook, the one he used for school projects, and began to write. Not an essay, not homework, just thoughts. He wrote about what it felt like to be seen as a threat when all he wanted was to get home. He wrote about fear that doesn't look loud but sits deep in your stomach. And he wrote about his mother, how she walked straight into that moment and changed it with calm power. He didn't know why he was writing. It just helped. Each sentence seemed to take a little weight off his shoulders. When his mother peeked in later, she saw him bent over the notebook. "What are you working on?" she asked softly. He smiled a little. "Just writing. About everything." She nodded approvingly. "That's good," she said. Writing helps you understand what your heart can't say out loud. He thought about that, then asked, "Do you ever get scared?" She paused, leaning against the doorway. "All the time," she said honestly. "But I don't let fear make my choices. That's what matters." He looked back at his notebook. "I think I want to do what you do someday," he said. Her face softened into a warm smile. "Then you'll do it even better," she said. He grinned faintly. "Maybe." She walked over and kissed the top of his head. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "You handled something hard with grace. Most grown-ups couldn't do that." After she left, he sat for a while longer, his pencil tapping lightly on the page. The words he had written stared back at him, full of honesty and quiet power. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. More attention, more questions. But tonight, he felt something new. Not fear, not shame, something stronger. It was the feeling of being seen, not by strangers on the internet, but by his mother, by himself, by the truth of what really happened. And in that small, quiet moment, he finally felt like the world might start to change, one story at a time. The days that followed were quiet but strange. The boy noticed how people at school looked at him differently now. Some smiled at him like they were proud. Others whispered quietly in the hallway. He could feel their curiosity, their pity, and their respect all at once. It made him uneasy. He didn't want to be famous for something like this. His teachers treated him gently, too gently sometimes. They asked if he was doing okay, if he needed time off, or if he wanted to talk. He knew they meant well, but he just wanted things to go back to normal. He spent lunch in the library most days. It was quiet there and nobody asked questions. He'd sit by the window staring out at the basketball court where his friends played. He wanted to join them, but he wasn't ready. Every time he saw a police car drive by the school, his chest tightened. He didn't want to feel scared anymore, but he couldn't stop it. One afternoon, while he was walking home, an older man from the neighborhood stopped him. "Hey, son," the man said kindly. "Saw that video online? That was you, wasn't it?" The boy nodded slowly. "Yeah," the man shook his head, his voice calm but heavy. "You handled yourself real well. A lot of folks wouldn't have stayed that calm. You remind me of my own boy back in the day." The boy smiled a little. "Thanks," he said softly. The man placed a hand on his shoulder. "You keep your head up. The world might try to tell you who you are, but you don't let it. You already know." The boy nodded again. The words stayed with him as he continued walking. When he got home, his mother was sitting at the dining table with papers spread out everywhere. She was on the phone, her voice calm but firm, talking about policy review, training reforms, and department accountability. She hung up as soon as she saw him. "How was school?" she asked. "It was fine," he said, though she could tell it wasn't completely true. "You sure?" He nodded. "Yeah, just different." She sighed softly and leaned back in her chair. "Different can be hard," she said, "but it can also mean change." He didn't answer. He sat across from her, noticing the fatigue in her eyes. "You've been working on this nonstop," he said. "I have to," she said. "If I let it go, it'll just be another story that fades away." He frowned slightly. "But don't you get tired of fighting all the time?" She smiled faintly. "Every day," she admitted. "But I fight because I have to. Because if I don't, who will?" He thought about that. He had always seen her as strong, untouchable. But now he could see the human side, the worry, the weariness, the love behind every choice she made. That night, she was invited to a community meeting. The local center had called, asking her to speak about what happened and what could be done to prevent it from happening again. She hesitated at first, but eventually agreed. "Will you come with me?" she asked her son. He paused, unsure. "You want me to?" "Yes," she said. "I think people need to see your face. They need to see this isn't just another headline, it's a real person." He thought about it for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay." The community center was crowded that evening. Rows of chairs filled the room, and people stood along the walls when the seats ran out. The air buzzed with quiet conversation. There were parents, teachers, teenagers, and even a few police officers from the neighborhood. When they walked in, a few heads turned. The boy felt nervous under all those eyes, but his mother placed a gentle hand on his back, guiding him toward the front. The moderator welcomed them, then handed the microphone to his mother. She stood poised and calm, scanning the room before she spoke. "Thank you for being here," she began. I'm not here to talk about anger or blame. I'm here to talk about awareness, about understanding, and about how we can do better. Her voice was steady, the kind that made people listen without feeling attacked. She talked about what happened, not the sensational version that had spread online, but the simple truth. A boy walking home, 2 officers acting on assumptions, and a moment that could have gone terribly wrong if not for patience and calm. Then she said something that made the whole room fall silent. "I'm an FBI agent," she said. "But that night I wasn't one. I was just a mother, and I shouldn't have needed a badge to protect my child." The crowd murmured softly. Some people nodded, others looked down. She continued, "We all have to ask ourselves hard questions. What do we see when we look at someone? Do we see danger, or do we see a child, a student, a neighbor? Because how we see people decides how we treat them." The boy watched from his seat, his chest swelling with quiet pride. His mother wasn't speaking for herself anymore. She was speaking for everyone who had ever felt powerless in a moment they didn't deserve. After she spoke, the moderator asked if anyone wanted to share their thoughts. A few people stood up talking about their own experiences. A teacher spoke about her fears for her students. A father talked about teaching his son how to stay safe during police stops. A young officer even stood up to apologize on behalf of his department, saying they needed more empathy and better training. Then someone asked the boy if he wanted to say anything. For a moment, he froze. All eyes turned to him. His heart thumped in his chest. He didn't plan to speak, but something in him pushed forward. He stood up slowly, his voice quiet at first, but clear. "I just want to say," he began, pausing to find the right words, "I didn't think anything like that could happen to me. I was just walking home. I wasn't doing anything wrong. But in that moment, it didn't matter what kind of person I was. They just saw someone they didn't trust." The room stayed completely silent. He looked down briefly, then back up. "But I also saw something else that night," he said. "I saw how one person, my mom, could change everything just by standing up calmly. And I realized that maybe that's how things start to get better. Not by yelling, not by fighting, but by standing firm and speaking truth." When he sat down, the room erupted in quiet applause, not loud or dramatic, but genuine. A few people wiped their eyes. His mother looked at him, her heart full. Later, when they drove home, the boy looked out the window at the passing lights. "That was scary," he said softly. "You did amazing," she told him. "You spoke from your heart." "People felt that," he smiled faintly. "Do you think any of it will actually change something?" She thought about it for a long moment before answering. "Change takes time," she said. "But every honest story, every open conversation, it all adds up. You never know who might be listening tonight, who might think differently tomorrow because of what you said." He nodded, thinking about the faces he had seen in that room, some hopeful, some uncertain, all human. When they got home, his sister ran to greet them, asking how the meeting went. He told her it went fine, but his mother could tell he was proud, even if he didn't say it. That night, as the house grew quiet, his mother sat at her desk writing a report. But halfway through, she stopped. She looked at a photo on her wall, the 2 of them smiling at a park years ago, and felt tears sting her eyes. Not of sadness, but of gratitude. She whispered softly to herself, "He's going to be okay." Upstairs, the boy lay awake in bed, thinking about everything that had happened over the last few days. Fear had turned into confusion, confusion into courage, and courage into purpose. He didn't understand it all yet, but he knew he had found something deeper inside himself. He picked up his notebook again and started to write. Sometimes it takes the wrong moment to show people what right should look like. He smiled at that line, closed the notebook, and turned off the light. Outside, the night was calm again. No flashing lights, no raised voices, just the soft hum of the neighborhood settling into peace. And for the first time since that night, he finally felt safe again, not just because his mother had saved him, but because he had begun to find his own voice. The next morning began like any other, but something in the air felt lighter. The boy woke up to the sound of birds outside his window and sunlight slipping through the curtains. For the first time in weeks, he didn't wake up from a bad dream. He took a deep breath, got out of bed, and stood in front of the mirror. His reflection stared back at him, the same face, the same eyes, but something had changed. He wasn't the same person who had walked home that evening weeks ago. He had seen how fast a normal day could turn into something unforgettable, But now he also knew how strength could show up in the quietest ways, in calm voices, steady hands, and simple truth. Downstairs, the smell of pancakes filled the kitchen. His mother was at the stove wearing her favorite gray sweater and humming softly to herself. She looked peaceful for the first time in a while. "Morning," she said, smiling when he walked in. "Morning," he replied. She handed him a plate. "You've got a meeting today, remember?" He blinked. "Meeting?" "With the local youth council," she said. "They invited you to come talk about your experience. It's a small group, students from different schools. Nothing formal," he hesitated. "You think I should go?" "I think it might help," she said gently. "Not just them, maybe you too." He nodded slowly. All right, they ate breakfast quietly. The kitchen window let in soft light, making everything look calm. His little sister came downstairs half asleep, dragging her blanket, and asked if there were any pancakes left. Their mother laughed and made another batch. It was the kind of simple morning that made everything else fade away for a while. Later that day, they drove to the community center again. This time it wasn't crowded, just a few teens sitting in a circle, a teacher nearby, and a whiteboard with the words, "Youth Voices Project" written across it. When they walked in, the teacher smiled. "Glad you could make it," she said. "We just wanted to have an open talk. No cameras, no press. Just people listening to each other." The boy sat down quietly. The students went around sharing thoughts about what it was like growing up, what scared them, what gave them hope, what they wished adults understood better. When it was his turn, he took a deep breath. "I used to think people like me just had to keep their heads down," he said slowly. "That if I stayed quiet and followed the rules, nothing bad would happen. But then I learned that sometimes it doesn't matter how good you are. People still see what they want to see." Everyone listened closely. He wasn't angry, just honest. "But I also learned something else," he said. "Even when you feel powerless, your voice still matters. You can change how people think just by telling the truth." When he finished, a girl sitting across from him spoke up. "You're really brave," she said softly. "I don't think I could have stayed calm like that." He shook his head. "I wasn't brave," he said. "I was scared. But I remembered what my mom always says. Stay calm even when the world isn't. I think that saved me." The teacher smiled. "That's a good lesson for all of us," she said. After the meeting, a few of the teens came up to him, asking questions and thanking him for speaking. One of them said he wanted to start a school club to talk about fairness and community trust. The boy promised to help. When they left, his mother looked proud. "You're doing something important," she said as they walked to the car. "I just told the truth," he said. "Exactly," she replied. "That's where change starts." Weeks passed and life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm. The story that had once been at the center of local headlines had faded from the news. But its impact didn't disappear. His mother's department continued working with the local police to improve their community training programs. They started holding workshops about how to handle bias, fear, and communication in high-pressure moments. Sometimes the officers who were involved in the incident attended those sessions too. They never spoke to him directly, but he saw the change in their eyes when they recognized him from across the room during one of the community events. There was no anger, just quiet understanding. One evening, as his mother was preparing dinner, her phone buzzed with an email notification. She opened it, read silently, then smiled. "What's that?" he asked. "The city council," she said. "They just approved a new mentorship program between law enforcement and students. They want me to help lead it," he grinned. "That's great, Mom," she nodded. "It is, and you know what? They want you to be one of the student representatives." He looked surprised. "Me? Why?" "Because you've already done more for this community than you realize," she said. "You made people listen. That's not something everyone can do." He thought about it, then smiled shyly. "Okay," he said. "I'll do it." That night, as they sat together at the dinner table, they talked about what the future might look like. Not just for their family, but for the neighborhood, for other kids who might find themselves in the same situation one day. His mother spoke softly, her eyes steady. "You know," she said, "when I got that call that night, all I could think about was getting to you as fast as I could. I didn't think about rules or procedure or who was right or wrong. I just thought about my son." He nodded, remembering the fear he'd felt standing on that sidewalk. But afterward, she continued, I realized something. It's not enough to save you once. I want to make sure the world changes enough so no mother ever has to get that kind of call again. He looked at her for a long time. You really think the world can change? She smiled. It already is. Slowly, but it is. And you're part of it. Months later, on a warm spring afternoon, the boy stood on a stage at a school assembly. He wasn't nervous anymore. He was speaking to students and parents about the mentorship program, explaining how small conversations could build bridges between police and communities. Behind him, his mother stood proudly watching her son speak with confidence and grace. He said, I used to think my story was just about something bad that happened. But now I see it's about what happened next, how people listened, how they changed, how we all learned to see each other better. We can't undo the past, but we can decide what kind of people will be moving forward. The crowd applauded. Not the kind of applause that fades quickly, but the kind that lingers, the kind that means something. When he stepped off the stage, a small group of students came to talk to him, telling him how his words made them feel seen. His mother watched quietly, tears in her eyes, realizing he had grown into his strength right before her. Later that evening, they walked home together, side by side. The air was cool and gentle, the sky streaked with soft orange light. Mom, he said after a moment. Yes? I think I know what I want to do after school, he said. Oh? She smiled. And what's that? He looked at her, his eyes full of quiet determination. I want to help people like you do. Maybe not in the same way, but something that makes a difference. She nodded, smiling proudly. That sounds perfect. They walked the rest of the way in silence, comfortable and calm. The world around them seemed a little brighter, a little kinder. When they reached home, he paused at the front door, looking out over the neighborhood, the same streets where everything had happened. For the first time, he didn't feel afraid to be there. He felt connected. He thought about that night, the flashing lights, the shouting, the fear, and then about everything that had come after, the conversations, the courage, the change. He realized that sometimes, moments that break you can also shape you into someone stronger. Inside, his mother turned off the lights and said goodnight. He went to his room, sat by the window and looked up at the stars. He whispered quietly to himself, maybe things really can get better. And in that small, peaceful moment, with the world quiet outside and hope slowly growing inside, it felt like they already had.